Hello and welcome back to Tech Route. Today we'll be delving into the world of CSS and we'll be creating a beautiful but very simple product card. And now the idea is just to show a bit of how we can apply linear gradient and conic gradients to the border of a card or a button or whatever it is. Without wasting so much time, let's get right into it. So to get started, this is simply what we'll be building. It's just a product card that sort of shows product description, the price, and then the add to cart button. The major trick here is to add this on the background. Of course, you can use background image to achieve this, but of course, if you use background image, you won't be able to get the border radius attached here, and then also the animation will be problematic. So, which is why this might be a bit useful. Then, secondly, if you hover on this, you notice that the border there's an animation that is on the border. So, without wasting much time, let's just dive right into it. So to get started, I'll put this side by side the browser and my VS Code, so you can use whatever code editor is comfortable for you. So I'll just go ahead and create a simple index.html file, and then I can also create a styles.css file. You can put this in a folder if you want to, but this is already in a folder for me. And so to get started, you can quickly use the exclamation mark with enter to get a simple HTML boilerplate, and can edit the title if you want to. And of course, you link up your style sheet. So I can add a link, CSS link, and I think this is styles.css. Once that is done, you can test that your style sheet works by adding a simple lorem text. And then you can come here and simply maybe put your body and put color red, just to be sure your style sheet works. So to test this out, you need a live server extension. I'll just go ahead and I think this is the live server extension. I mean, it just makes it easy for you. So you have the go live button, and then once you click that, it opens it for you, so you can see that the red color is applied. From here on, we can move forward. So we can simply add a div here, maybe div.card. So this will just create a div with the class card. Now once you have this, you can add an image tag, and then for the alt, you can just call it product1. So I'll just get a product image. You can always use whatever product image you want to, but I would also drop a link to the code. I'll drop a GitHub link, so you can use the same image if you want to. So we just add a link to the image. That's the product card. Next thing we add the history tag, and we can just write premium headphones. And next we can add a p tag for a bit of a product description. So I'll just copy in the product description for the first product and put that in. Next, we can have a p tag. So maybe I'll add the class to this, card__price, using the BEM convention. So we can just add a price to this. So I'll just put this in. You add a price to it, and with that, we can simply just add our button and then add to cart. We don't need to add a class here because this is the only button we have on the page, and I think with this we are good. We can decide to just copy this and maybe just to have two product cards, and of course we can just change the information here. So first I'll change the email, the image URL, just to have a different feel and a different product, I guess. And then I can change the name here to Ankara shoes, and then I just update the description also. And then the price can stay the same for now. For all we care, the price can always stay the same. And then we'll go down to the main focus for today, which is the CSS. So the first thing would be basically to add the basic resets. I think that would be before and after. And then of course we can add box sizing, border box, and then we can add a margin of 0 and a padding of 0. Now with that done, we can maybe add a basic style. We can add basic styling to the body just to also give us a bit of shape to work with. So we can add a display flex, justify content center to center the content on the page, and then we can add a line item center, or probably just center this, and then flex wrap, just so that because I'm shrinking the screen, so that I just wrap the content if the screen gets too small. So you can add a gap of 3 rems. So I think to use rem, something I just like to do, again this is optional, but to use rem I would like to set the font size on the HTML to 62.5%. that way 1 rem equals 10 pixels, so I know that this is 30 pixels on default. I think it just makes it easier to calculate when working with rems. Next thing, I'll add a mean height to 100 VH. Just again, it's just a tutorial. This is just basically a prefix, and I'll add the background and the font, so you can just add this to yours. Again, you can use any background. This doesn't even affect what we are working on today. So of course we can start to style the card. So with the card, we want to add a padding of maybe 3 rem, 2 rem. This should work, and a border radius of 1.6 rem. So this is basically my extension doing its thing. This used to be a thing back in the days to add prefix for browser support, but these days you don't even need this. So of course you can clearly even take this out. And the next will be the box shadow. So I can have 0, I can have 6 pixels, I can have 16 pixels, and I can have a RGBA with a 0, 0, 0, 0.1. Again, these are just values I tested with, so you can always use whatever values work nicely for you. Again, it's all coming into shape. We'll come back to this with time, but you can clearly see the box shadow already taking effect. Then afterwards, I can do a width of say maybe 25 rem, and then I can put a text align center to center the entire thing, and that's for the text basically in the card. So for now we can leave the card like this. Next thing is the image, so we can just select the card and the image. So for the image, I can have a width of auto, I can have a height of 12 rem. I can, so you see, I think that's made it look a little bit better. Have an object fit of cover. I can have a border radius of 1.2 rem, and then I can have a margin bottom of 1.6 rem. Now with that done, I would style the H3 elements next. So I can just do this H3, and then I can go a margin of 0 and 8 pixels, and a font size of 1.8 rem, and then a font weight of 600 just to make it a little bit bold, and then a color of can have a hashtag of 222. I think this should come out nicely. And then from here on, I think we are done with that. We can style the P tag, and then a font size of, can have a font size of 1.4 rem just to make it a little bit smaller, and then we can have a color of 666. So we can have a margin of 0.8 rem generally across it, and then we go to the card price, and then we can have a font size of 2 rems, a font weight of bold, and then we have a color that is maybe darker. I think this should be a little bit darker, and then a margin bottom of 1.6 rem just to give it a bit of room. And then lastly, we want to style the button, so I'll just go ahead and add the style for the button and then maybe walk through it. So we'll just update the background, and then we have the border, and then we also have padding. These are just basically things we've done before, and then we have a cursor pointer, and then we have a little animation that basically lightens up the button by adding an opacity on it, which has a transition just to give it a bit of a smooth effect. So if you see, if I hover on the button, you have a bit of the smooth effect. So to the start of the show, we can add the background color to the card, and maybe something like white smoke, just to get a feel of what it looks like. Now with what we have, you can see, maybe we just try to fix the height difference on the card. I can go ahead and just maybe add a class to the description. So I can just see class card description. I would also go ahead and add it to the other P element, to the other item, and then once I do that, I can come here and update this to become card description, and then I think that changes something. So we can go ahead and add a little bit of height to it, maybe 5 rem, and then add this to maybe 27, 28 rem, and then we save it. So I think this looks a lot better now. And again, I mean, for your use case, there are product cards where you see them truncate this text to make it shorter, or it depends on what the company wants to achieve. But yeah, just to move forward. So what we'll have to do now is we'll just go ahead and replace this with a background keyword to sort of add the background image, because of course, you know, a gradient is sort of a background image. So we can go ahead and add a linear gradient with a flat white color. Now once we do this, we can add a comma to this, and then add your conic, or maybe just to see what this looks like. You see that this is just basically a white image background. Now one thing to note is we don't want this white background to also fill up the transparent border we have. So we are going to also put a space and add padding box to this. So just like for border sizing, just like we have border box, which basically means it applies to the content, the padding, and the border. This time around, the padding box means it applies just to the padding and the content. So the border is exempted. Now we can add a comma, because of course you can layer backgrounds. So you add a conic gradient, and then you can just paste in this color and copy the color, of course. And then, so for the conic gradient, we want it to be on the border box. You might want to explicitly state that, just in case. Although we have that on our default, so we might not need to, but just in case, you might also want to state that if you don't have that reset on your global CSS. Now once we've added the background, the next thing and the most important thing is to add the border, because we want that to take shape. So we add the border of 5 pixels solid, and we'll make it transparent. Now it has to be transparent so that this background can fill up the part of that border. So once I go ahead and save this, you notice that we have the gradient on the border already. Now if I hover on this, of course nothing happens, but we are going to go ahead and improve this. Now we've been able to achieve having the border, and the difficult part, which is going to be having to add animation to this. So to be able to animate this, we would have to declare a custom CSS property, and usually we use the as property keyword to do this. Now this is basically a set of Handuni API. Maybe I'll just add a link to this. Now this maybe I'll just add a link to this. So basically, like I mentioned, it allows you add custom CSS rules that the browser can apply. So this is basically a low-level API that allows that gives developers a bit more power over CSS to be able to add styles at the base level. Now with this, we'd have to add a custom property, and it usually starts with being prefixed with a dash dash keyword and then the name. Of course, I'm just going to name it angle. And then usually you have to add a syntax, which is this. I think this is the syntax, and then it takes an initial value which can be anything, but I'll go for degrees, and then inherits, I'll say true if you inherit font and other properties from the parents. Now again, all of this is in the document here. You can see how it is being used. So you just basically name a custom property, and then of course you can add the syntax, the inherits, and the initial values. Now once this is done, we'll go ahead and use this custom property. So, and I'll say this starts from, and of course I would add the variable angle. Now I also have to add a comma here, and then once I save this and go back to my product card, I see that nothing has really changed, although if you noticed earlier, the position of each of the colors moved a bit based on what we have here. Now all we have to do now is add a keyframe to this to enable us rotate it. So we can call this rotate, and then we can say rotate to, and then of course we are rotating the angle variable. We can rotate it to 1 turn. Of course you can also use degrees, but we can rotate it to make a full turn. So we go ahead and use the rotate animation. So we can come here and select card, hover, and then we can add an animation to it. We can say rotate 3 seconds, maybe linear and infinite, to run continuously. Now once we add this and we come to the browser and we save, once I hover on this, you notice that it is now rotating. But then if I go out of this, you see that it jumps back to the initial position, and then when I hover on it again, it starts to rotate, and then if I go out, it jumps back to the initial position. Now I struggled a bit to fix this, but then I saw a video from Kevin Powell, and I think he found a solution for this. So big ups to him. I would add a link to the video on the chat also, so you can also look at that. Now basically the hack is you have to take this animation and bring it into the card itself. Now of course the problem with that is it rotates infinitely, so of course that naturally would not make sense. So the hack is you take it off the hover, and then you manually set the animation play state. So you can set it to post. Now setting it to post means the animation stop, and then here all you have to do is on hover, animation play state, you can set it to running. So with that, if I come here and I hover on it and I go out, you see it stays, and then of course it then continues. If I go out, it stays. So yeah, I think this is just basically what we were trying to achieve today, and I hope you're able to learn something. It was a really good one. You can use this for a product. Again, there's a hover here, there's a hover. I mean, it's subtle, so it doesn't take away the focus from the product. So I think it's something that you can look to implement on your e-commerce website. With that being said, I will add the code to the description, to GitHub repo, to the description, so that you can, if you want to copy the startup code, you can. Thank you for staying till the end, and I hope you enjoyed that. I would also be linking up a video on the order with which the browser applies our CSS rules. I hope that would also be useful for you. Finally, I would encourage you to like and share and subscribe if this video was really helpful. Thank you. See you on the next one.